In today's video, we're taking this 3D printed building and we're gonna make it look dumpy. Why? Because they make it like that. For those of you just joining me, my name is Tim. I have a wife, 2.5 kids, and a dog, and I love all things model trains, but I specialize mostly in weathering and graffiti. If that's something that interests you, feel free to hit that subscribe button and click the bell so that you're notified every single time I post a new video. So Jimmy from DIY and Digital sent me this 3D printed HO scale warehouse. I did a quick unboxing and first impressions video for you. If you haven't seen it, I'll put it right here. And I promised you that I would get into a bit of detailing on this building. So that's what we're gonna do today. Now I've gone ahead and I've started sanding it a little bit because you can really see, when you look up close, you can see the 3D print lines on this particular model. Now the way a 3D printer works is it actually prints really tiny layers, and it starts its way from one end and it goes all the way up. So what I'm doing right now with the sanding is I'm actually getting rid of the lines. Depending on the printer you use, you can actually see the layers individually as you go up the piece. Now, it's not that big of a deal since it's going to be painted and weathered, but I'm just doing the extra step just to make it just a little bit more smooth. So I'm pretty happy with how this is looking. Again, it's kind of hard to tell how smooth I want it until I get paint on it to really see if the texture comes through. There is a chance that I may have to paint it and then sand it again and then paint it again just to get it to that desired texture that I'm looking for. So when I paint, I don't use any kind of specific color for a specific task. I like to mix my own colors and come up with a look that just feels right. So for this concrete color, I have an idea in my head of what I want it to look like. I kind of want like a creamy off-white concrete color. I don't have one of those. So I'm just gonna mix a bit of white and a bit of burnt umber, maybe a little bit of yellow, and hope for the best. It's more fun that way, I find. I'm not too worried about brush strokes on this coat because I know it's a first coat, it's a base coat. I'm just looking to get a good initial coverage. Now you might be asking yourself, Tim, why are you painting with a brush instead of an airbrush or a spray can or anything like that? Now the answer to your question is quite simple. I live in Ontario, Canada, and we are in another lockdown, which means that all the hardware stores are closed. All of the craft stores are closed. Anything non-essential is roped off in places like Walmart. And I don't have any spray paint right now that's a color that I like for this particular model. My kids are asleep and my air compressor is loud, so I'm not using my airbrush. So I am brush painting. I like to give myself a challenge and I think that it's gonna look good, so I'm not too concerned. It's kind of fun sometimes to do something with a brush rather than with a spray can or an airbrush. Sometimes you get a texture that you weren't expecting, or you'll get a specific look or a specific color that you weren't expecting. I don't know, it's just fun. Am I upset that the entire province is in a lockdown and model train supplies are not considered essential? Absolutely I am. But I'm making the best of it. So now I'm just hitting it with 1000 grit paper, really fine paper, just so that I can smooth out some of these brush strokes. Now you're starting to see the plastic come through it again, but we'll just do another coat and we'll get a nice final coat. Now the key with sanding this is you always want to go against the grain of the print lines. The print lines are horizontal across the building. I'm going up and down vertically with my sandpaper, and that way I'm not actually taking the paint out of the grooves. And you can actually see the paint lines on the side of the building because the paint is staying inside the paint lines, and that's how you're getting that smooth finish. So this time around, I'm actually gonna use a sponge to get a bit of a textured look instead of the brush strokes from before. But I'm gonna use the same color combination. I just wanna give it a more finalized coat this time. Now just dabbing the sponge over and over and over again is gonna give it that nice textured look. Now it's kind of hard to see, but the texture on this is turning out pretty nice, if I do say so myself. Thing about the sponge that's kind of annoying is getting into the tiny little corners. A thing you can do is you can actually just kind of throw some paint on here with the paintbrush and then go in with the sponge and clean it up. So we're gonna just set that to dry. So while I'm waiting for the paint to dry on the building, I'm actually gonna work on the roof pieces. So I am going to use a combination of Fine Ballast by Woodland Scenics, and some black paint. It sounds unconventional. It probably is unconventional, but I'm unconventional. I'm doing the same sponge technique but with black paint, just so that we don't see that raw gray underneath the ballast that we're putting on the roof. Now while the paint is still wet, you're going to take the ballast and sprinkle it on. Give it a bit of a shake and it should be good. So I actually went ahead and I hit it with a pretty good layer of Tester's dull coat. Now the thing is, it's just gonna sit on a building on your layout. It's not really going anywhere. That's why I wasn't too worried about breaking out the alcohol or the glue or any of that stuff. This will hold it just fine. Alrighty, so we've gone ahead and done the loading dock on both sides with a nice darker concrete gray. The door frames for all of the loading docks are now black. So now I'm gonna go ahead and get that man door painted. I'm thinking a nice dark blue, like an industrial blue, and then the bay doors are all gonna be white. So I think that's pretty much it as far as paint goes. I'm still waiting on the roof to dry. I'm not gonna put the roof on just yet anyway because I still want to do some weathering and some graffiti. So I went ahead and I made up some signs for this building. We're calling it SEDA Logistics. That's an inside joke. When my nephew was a toddler, we used to always go down into the basement and SEDA trains. Now this building is not going on my layout because it's HO scale. I model N scale, but it can't hurt to have multiple SEDA Logistics locations in the world. So we're gonna have one in HO scale, and I also have a SEDA Logistics on my layout as well. I went ahead and I photoshopped some signs to go on the doors just to notify the driver to check in, and an authorized personnel sign. Just shrunk them down to size and just printed them on regular printer paper. I'm just gonna glue them on straight onto the building. Now for the main sign, I'm going to actually glue it onto aluminum can, just to give it a little bit extra thickness, and then glue that onto the building as well, and then it's on to weathering. So I've gone ahead and I mixed up a wash with some black paint and a lot of water, and I'm just using that to kind of dull down the overall look of the building. The nice thing about this is if it's too much, you can always just wipe it off. Now, like I mentioned in my last weathering video, you always want to make sure that when you're weathering, you're going in a downward motion, because that's how gravity works. So without any further ado, it's time for graffiti. So the thing that's fun about doing graffiti this small is you can legitimately just take an ultra-fine Sharpie pen like this and just scribble something, and it looks like graffiti from a distance. Like, look at this door right here. I just literally wrote a bunch of scribbles. I mean, I had in mind to say Jimmy from DIY and Digital, but it just kind of looks like a scribble from here, but it works. Same thing, I can take this green one, come over here by the loading dock, and just scribble something. And that's just about it. I'm pretty happy with how the graffiti looks. I am just going to give it a quick dusting with the clear coat, and then maybe do a little bit of a wash over top of the graffiti so that it blends in, and then it's done. Oh, I almost forgot the roof. I am very pleased with how this turned out. It's always so cool to see something go from just raw plastic to looking so much like reality. I think it's one of my favorite parts of the hobby. If you learned something from this video, feel free to hit the subscribe button and click the bell so that you're notified whenever I post new videos. I post videos regularly on model railroad techniques, mostly specializing in graffiti and weathering. I plan on going into depth on my own layout and showing you a little bit about that in the near future, so you're gonna wanna stay tuned for that as well. Once again, thank you Jimmy from the DIY and Digital for sending me this building, and we'll see you in the next one.